Today's episode actually started way back in March 2020. While we're all stuck at home for that first wave of lockdowns, I reached out to my good friend Todd Kerns to have a chat. Todd's a talented multi-instrumentalist, he's a producer, and he also plays with the likes of Slash featuring Myles Kennedy The Conspirators, Toque, The Age of Electric, and more. He's also an accomplished solo artist in his own right. While I'm none of these things, Todd and I do share one thing in common, our love for the band Kiss. We've shared many chats, usually accompanied by coffee, about our favourite band. And this time we go a little deep. We talk about our favourite obscure songs and more. This chat actually got lost to the technology overlords a long time ago, only recently getting it back. So I'm really happy to share it with you all. So here is Drew and Dammit Chat Kiss Volume 1. Alright, let's go with it. Let's go. Kiss time.
All right. Put my Kiss hat on. This is my Kiss hat.
Yeah.
What do I have back here for Kiss stuff? Oh, there's an Iceman back there. I don't know if you can see that. It's an Iceman, and then I have my black Flying V from the Go Time album that has mirror stuff on it to kind of mock up Paul Stanley stuff. There's more Kiss stuff in this house than,
Yeah.
too much.
All right. I'm actually in my home office garage, so I can actually see all my CDs, which is really cool.
That's awesome. I've been needing to set up my CDs and records and shit, but it's my house is like I finally had a wife move in and sort of what's the word? It looks more grown up now.
Bachelor.
Yeah, it used to look like somewhere between a used bookstore and Neverland Ranch. I'm not quite sure. Something in that area. But go ahead. What is this? What do you? I haven't made any preparation. Just to let everybody know, I haven't had any preparation on this. This is just sort of straight up like getting hit with stuff and away we go.
First Kiss album. Let's talk like sort of. I want to go like obscure. Your favorite obscure song and why. So first Kiss.
Obscure song. Interesting. I guess it would define what's obscure, because we, as you know, Kiss fans, as I've learned more and more, especially after doing the cruise 3 times now and about to do 4 if everything goes well enough. There's no such thing as obscure Kiss songs to the real hardcore fans, but I'm just gonna pick out of the top of my head something like Mr. Make Believe off of the Gene Simmons solo album in 1978.
So if you had to go from the very first Kiss album only, though.
Oh, for the very first Kiss album?
Yeah.
Well, you know what's so funny is I've had this conversation a lot about the very first Kiss album. In many ways, over the years, it has become my favorite Kiss album, and let me explain why. It's funny because when you're a kid, you often, I don't know about you, but I had heard Kiss Alive before I heard the first Kiss album. So the Kiss Alive record, those versions of those songs, obviously, in a lot of ways, are the quintessential versions because they're so much more. It's just the energy's so much higher, the tempo's a little quicker, the guitars are a little dirtier. But I don't think you can really sort of discount how important the first album when you look at Deuce, Strutter, Nothing to Lose, Cold Gin, 100,000 Years. What am I missing? There's like.
Let Me Know.
Let Me Know, sure. Anyway, there's the 5 that I just mentioned there without Let Me Know even. Those 5 you could play. Oh, Black Diamond. So that's 6. I'm not including Let Me Know only because it wasn't really on. They never really played it live that much, but yeah. It's sort of like 6 or 7 of those songs on that album could be played in the Kiss set list today. And we would be happy. We'd be like, oh, cool. They're playing Nothing to Lose, or they're playing, whatever. And I think it just because of the nature of a band who, like most bands, first albums can be really cool because they had so much time to just write songs and a few years of just kind of getting it together. So that sometimes the second and third albums can suffer because it's like, we need you to go in and make an album right now. Okay. So now I kind of look back at the first album with this whole other feeling of like, you know, you have to kind of give it. It's a lot like the guitars are a lot cleaner, the tempos are a lot slower, and things are a lot less. Like the energy's a little more controlled. But I have to admit that record really, to me, kind of wins because of the just volume of classic Kiss songs on one studio album. I don't think any of the records could really boast that. I mean, that's debatable. But I suppose as far as the, I would say "Let Me Know" would be the best. What you referred to as what was the initial?
Like non-single obscure song.
Like, it's always that one song that we were always kind of knocked out by. I always loved Gene and Paul trade-offs, like a John Lennon, Paul McCartney kind of trade-off that way too. So when, you know, Gene's singing the verse, and then all of a sudden Paul comes out of nowhere, you know, did you ever need loving? You know, that whole thing. And then the ending is so, you know, oh, those harmonies are huge harmonies, and then out of nowhere, that ending guitar solo that they attach to the end of She later on. Yeah, I mean, that song has so many elements about Kiss that is just almost perfect in one song. So yeah, I'd say "Let Me Know."
That was mine, yeah. That was mine too, purely because it's just so bizarre.
It is, yeah.
It's like
it's very real. Like those guys have a lot of songs that are real kind of like, sort of, you know, Chuck Berry almost kind of like, like a lot of like that kind of stuff that goes on in that era of Kiss music. And I think that's sort of, to me, you know, we always miss that kind of like little bit of Keith Richards in there, and a little bit of that Paul kind of made his own, really.
Yeah, and like to me, it's almost like 2 or 3 songs put together.
Well, I guess it was "Sunday Driver," wasn't it?
Yeah, but and just when you hear you've got the trade-off vocals,
yeah,
you got that a cappella bit at the end, then the guitar part. It's like,
yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
In 3 minutes or whatever. It's not very long. It's not like it's a epic tune. It's like a standard rock and roll song. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I wonder where that fitted in the early days, because to me it seems like it actually belonged with Life in the Woods from that pre-era.
Yeah, you know, you're absolutely right. Like some of that stuff that didn't make the record. I suppose you could probably argue that the love theme from Kiss is also another great unsung kind of, you know, but it doesn't quite have the same things that "Let Me Know" has, which has every element of a quintessential classic Kiss song, because you got Gene singing it, Paul singing it, and that guitar solo, which I assume is a totally different piece that kind of was created as that was attached at the end of the song as some sort of like, well, where should we put this thing, you know? And that's why it ends up on the end of She, and probably has ended up on a few of other songs over the years. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, but it makes me wonder whether like it was one of those moments where they're in the studio and someone was just warming up.
It sounds like an Ace Frehley thing to me. That sounds like an Ace thing. Like it sounds like something Ace came up with. But yeah, you know, the fact that he turned it into the extended guitar solo and the Ace Frehley moment on Kiss Alive 1 only makes sense, you know?
Yeah. All right, so next, Hotter Than Hell.
Okay, well, let's go through Hotter Than Hell. Well, there's a lot of good ones on Hotter Than Hell, because, I mean, you know, Coming Home and stuff like that, I don't know that we would even get the fact that I never really heard that live until Unplugged. You know, Mainline.
Mainline is the one for me.
Is it?
Yeah, it was always Coming Home was my favorite song, and then when they did that 95 convention tour, the first time they played it was in Australia.
Once you see the response of the audience, you must have to go like, wow, we better learn that one, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you've written that volume of music, eventually something like Coming Home must be kind of like, oh yeah, Coming Home. Yeah, that was a fun one. But yeah, I love that. At the end of the song, the outro is just bitching.
So simple. It's so simple. But yeah, like recently, I'd probably say in the last 6 months, mainline all the time.
Mainline's fantastic. Is that who wrote that song, Mainline? Is that Ace
Ace,
Frehley?
Ace,
Yeah, yeah, and it's a Peter vocal. Peter sings the shit out of that song.
yeah.
Trying to think what I would consider, obviously stuff like Going Blind, like we're steering clear of the Hotter Than Hells and the Let Me Know, Got to Choose. I'm trying to think of the other ones that would be kind of single.
Yeah,
Because
then you go roll.
in a lot of ways, Hotter Than Hell is one of my favorite records, and a lot of people get down on the production of that record, and I go, but there's something about the production of that record that is so it makes it so creepy with things like Strange Ways and stuff like that, that Sabbathy kind of thing, this big washy reverb sound to it. To me, I always, I was a kid when I heard it the first time, so it's kind of like, it wasn't like I was sitting there going like, questioning the production values of my favorite records. I was kind of going, I like this record and I don't like this record, or whatever it was. And I think Hotter Than Hell there's a vibe about that record, and it might be in that weird production that might have in some ways added to whatever otherworldly vibe there was about that record. But I would say Mainline.
Grunge.
Yeah, it was pretty grungy, wasn't it? It has a Sabbathy type quality to it when you think of like Parasite and Strange Ways. There's some heavy stuff on that record. But
I think if they tried to remaster it, they'd ruin it.
It's one of those things like, it's like Raw Power by the Stooges. It's like, by all intents and purposes, the production is flawed, but to try and fix it would make it wouldn't be as good. I wouldn't have the same vibe. So, and that's an endless conversation because, but the collection of songs again wins. It's just, there's not really a bad song in that record to me.
Yeah.
I love, we love all the records anyway, but that one in particular, I would say probably of the ones that were the deep cuts, I would say Going Blind or Mainline or even Coming Home.
Yeah.
Only the ones that come to mind anyway of the deep cuts.
Yeah.
If you're gonna make deep cuts mixtape, I think those are some of the ones you'd put on there.
Yeah. All right. So Dress to Kill next, which was my very first Kiss album. And the first thing I saw was an in-store display just with the albums hanging, all the different Kiss albums. And I just pointed at it. I was 3. I was like, that one.
Oh, wow, you were 3. Well, you were young. Yeah, no, that's a really good one, too. I mean, there's so many things about Dress to Kill that make it almost a perfect record, too. The production's getting a little... It's still a bit more subdued than what would come from the live album, obviously, but it's kind of got some of the best elements, like but there's so many like of the deep cuts, if you want to stay in that vein. Love Her All I Can, for all intents and purposes, was not a single, but it should have been. And in a lot of ways, every Kiss fan, when you start playing that riff, goes bananas. We all love that. Anything from My Baby.
That's the one.
That's the one for you?
Absolutely.
Two-Timer. Room Service. Come on, Room Service. That's the shit right there.
Yeah.
Like those 4 songs alone, even though they're quote unquote wouldn't be what we consider the singles off that record, those 4 songs are like kind of almost perfect to me. Like they're great Kiss songs. But yeah, that's a tough one. That would be a really tough one for me. I'd say Love Her All I Can, but yeah, I'm with you on anything for my baby, I would steal. Thinking of She as like kind of like an add-on, like from the Wicked Lester days. But what a great song. Like, I mean, we didn't know that this was a leftover song in 1970, what is that, 75 at that point yet? Or
yeah.
Yeah. We wouldn't have known that. To me, it just was a great Kiss song. It has that cool harmony thing going. The harmonies go through the whole song.
Yeah.
Like that kind of 2-part harmony that Gene and Paul are singing. And that's not really a single either, even though they did play it on the Kiss Alive records,
yep.
So we're playing it live. But it's hard to say because I'm all kind of equating a lot of this as to what I heard live on Kiss Alive 1. I wasn't around back then to have heard them play mainline or Love Her All I Can live. I'm assuming that they probably tried to put as much as they could live in some fashion or other, but for the songs that we probably consider somewhat forgotten, at least in terms of like the general public would know, because they would know Dress to Kill by Rock and Roll All Night and Come On and Love Me, maybe.
Yeah.
Come On and Love Me is a fantastic song.
It's funny that I was watching a video last night of them doing it on the second leg of the reunion tour.
Oh yeah.
So that Lost Cities run.
Yeah.
And I wish it was like, and I know they were older then, but all I could think of is 1975, thanks, like When You Didn't Care.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
You didn't care how fast it was. You didn't care how out of tune it was.
Right. Yeah.
It lost it over the years. The only time that I've ever heard them do it well since 1975 was those couple of times on bootlegs on the Hot in the Shade tour.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, the Hot in the Shade was the real sort of like, that's when they really kind of, I guess, sort of really embraced the real past catalog, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's just only because I thought that was a really great tour that someone on a website posted a link of every bootleg from that tour.
Oh wow!
I kind of went through.
That'd be a lot of fun, yeah. And they played Come On for a stretch of that.
Yeah, I think it might be on one of the club shows because there's that Stone Pony show, that rehearsal show they did.
Yeah.
You can see the vibe already from that tour.
Oh, really? Wow. I would love to have seen that kind of club environment. I've never seen that. I've only ever seen it I saw them at the Joint in Vegas, but that's not quite the same thing. Stone Pony is ridiculous. It's like, that'd be nuts.
I saw the closest I've seen was that In Your Face tour they did here, where they did like the theater shows and they did all the rare songs.
Oh, I love it. That's great.
So there's that. I think the footage is on like that Rock the Nation DVD.
Oh, okay.
All right, so skip the live album, Destroyer.
You're sitting in your seat.
Yep.
Latest
song.
That's a great song. Yeah, it's that is an underrated song actually. There's a lot of interesting stuff on that record. I mean, it's funny because Destroyer still is special to me, but it doesn't really kind of land on that thing of being a quintessential, as important. I mean, it's important for what it is. Obviously, Detroit, God of Thunder, both Paul Stanley songs. One of them sung by Gene Simmons. Shout It Out Loud. Obviously, there's some songs on there that will always be in the set list. They could be in the set list today and they'll always work. Then there's some interesting, Bath obviously, but there's some interesting deep cuts on those records, on that record. Sorry, like Great Expectations. What's the other Gene? See You Tonight or See You in Your Dreams Tonight? Sweet Pain.
Rock and Roll Over is See You in Your Dreams.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah. Because I get that, and Love 'Em, Leave 'Em is also on Rock and Roll Over, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those two records to me, it's funny because those are definitely records that I owned, bought those records on the same, boom. Because they're almost the sister records to me. I always think of those, which I think everybody does, those first three albums, and then the live album, and then the next three albums, and then a live album. So there are times where Love Gun, Rock and Roll Over, and Destroyer all bleed into one another for me. But I would say, I'd have to say Great Expectations. What else is on that I'm missing? That's
Flaming Youth,
Sweet Pain, Flaming Youth. Yeah, those are fantastic too. Yeah. Do You Love Me? I kind of always think of Do You Love Me as kind of like a fairly appreciated. They definitely played the crap out of that live for sure.
Yeah, and I didn't really appreciate Destroyer as much until they redid it a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was cool, wasn't it? Yeah. But I've always been a bigger fan of Kiss as a rock band. So when they start kind of putting in all the bells and whistles, it's awesome, but it's not my Kiss. I like to hear Kiss as just guitar, drums, and singing. You know what I mean? But that said, there's a lot of great things on Destroyer that obviously are classic to this day.
To me, as the Kiss nerd, they reckon, you know how they redid that outro when they play it live now?
Yeah.
Apparently that was done back then, but was cut.
Oh, really?
That's the rumor has it.
I could see that though, because it does end kind of like. Does it fade? I'm trying to think how it ends.
It's a really bizarre fade that just sort of, you're wondering when the fade's going to end.
Right. Yeah. And sort of dissipates into.
And then
that's
to that audio outro from Alive.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's really that's very interesting. But Do You Love Me is definitely like that song that is kind of a single in my brain. Like I feel like it was never underappreciated. You know what I mean? We all know it should have been. Yeah, yeah. Now things like Sweet Pain, which we all love that song. Flaming Youth, I love that song. Those to me could have easily been, standout tracks too. And Great Expectations is so unusual of a song, really. Like, especially with a Gene song, it's sort of like this sort of ballady type effect to it. But yeah, no, I guess those are the three. I guess I don't know. There's no ace in that record.
No, if the Kulik Band were ever going to do a make-up Kiss song, it'd be Flaming Youth.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's is leather. Yeah, that's a great song. When the Age of Electric first got together in 1989, the drummer and I were playing together in bands prior to that for several years before we ever put Age of Electric together with our little brothers. But we had always had this idea, we're going to put a band together with our brothers and we're going to call it Flaming Youth, which never happened. But that's what we had as our sort of like, and we'll call it Flaming Youth. Totally, dude. We had all these wacky ideas because that was at a time where it was the early days of that kind of stuff where we'll all wear headsets like Sammy Hagar does on the 5150 record. It'll be radical, man. No one does that. And I think like, oh, that would have been awful. It's like, that would have been absolutely awful. But
if you've got your own deep cuts from Age of Electric you haven't released, you should just release it and call it Flaming Youth.
We totally should.
Just to do it now.
Well, we were youth and we were flaming, I guess. Yeah, we were on fire. Yeah, in the way Paul, I think. Yeah.
All right, rock and roll over.
Well, that I guess that would be Love 'Em, Leave 'Em, See You in Your Dreams. So See You in Your Dreams, he ended up doing on the solo album too, right?
Yeah.
I will say I appreciate the solo album one more for understanding where he was going with it. But yeah. So yeah, we go into Baby Driver, Take Me,
Ladies Room.
What's what? Ladies
Room.
Yeah. Although Ladies Room ended up on Kiss Alive too, so I think that's kind of certainly appreciated. I think Take Me actually opened that tour, didn't it?
Second song.
Oh, right. Yeah. So Detroit into
Take Me.
Oh, they didn't do King of the Nighttime World?
No, that was Destroyer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Again, so I would that's a tough one. I'd probably say Love 'Em, Leave 'Em. I just, it's a ridiculous over the top perfect Gene song. That video is fantastic. The Love 'Em, Leave 'Em, playing the bass.
Yeah. Where he looks like a Lego guy.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
For me, now it's Baby Driver now because I've heard that original demo.
Sure, yeah.
Where he doing the run through.
Yeah, that's definitely up there. Yeah. Now, is Baby Driver a Paul Stanley? Did Paul write that song?
No, it was a Penridge. Give 10% to Peter. Song.
Right. Okay, so it technically is outside written song.
Yeah. It's a pre-Kiss song.
Right. Huh. That's definitely got a great side to it.
Yeah, it's just one from that time frame where that how we get the demos every now and again.
Yeah.
It's the one pre-Kiss one that's probably I don't think I've ever heard.
Hmm.
Because
Interesting.
there's like an original Beth and there's an original thing like the stuff from his solo albums are out there.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
would, that's up there. But that one was, like, what's the other ones that we were just talking about? I mean, Take Me is like,
hate me
I that's an amazing song.
making love.
Oh, Making Love, yeah. That's not really underappreciated though, is it? It's a pretty quintessential Kiss song.
Yeah, see, I think they got the order of the album wrong. I actually think I Want You should have closed the album and Making Love should have opened the album.
Ooh, I Want You. Yeah, that's really
Yeah, I
that would
just
have been
think
really cool.
it's epic. Like, because they
Oh,
could
when
have
he had with that guitar bit, like in the morning I raise my head. That'd be really cool, actually. Yeah.
last song, but then you fade out with just that guitar part at the end of the song, no vocals.
Oh, interesting.
That
I
like
like
I've always
how much thought you've given this whole
yeah, I've
thing about
always thought that song was undone.
restructuring the track listing and whatnot. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
to me, I Want You was always unfinished.
it is a great song. Yeah, I mean, Paul sings the shit out of that,
Yeah,
and it's even more over the top by the time he gets to the live album, isn't it?
yeah, that's when he really
Yeah,
like. But then you also think about that Revenge tour where he was doing it, I think, for a little bit then as well, and on Hot in the Shade. Because
yeah.
to me, that's when he was vocally at his peak,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it was just
He was took it up several notches by then. Yeah.
actually because they also did it on the '95 tour, the Australian tour here,
Oh, cool.
and he was on top then. Like that was Paul right before he went back to reunion tour. They were the best live band I'd ever seen at that point.
Agreed. Absolutely.
When they went into I Want You, and it was just he probably did that vocal thing more than any other tour in
Yeah.
Australia. He was let rip. It was so good.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's the perfect song to stretch himself out on, flex your
Most
muscles,
people
as it were.
take a piss, and I was just staring.
Yeah. Totally. It's actually a really underrated song in general. The like you say, the intro and the fact that they return to that broken down intro after the solo. It's a really cool arrangement. Like and then the riff down, down. That
Yeah,
whole thing is like there's a lot going on. Like, da 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 da. That whole thing is it's a really very cleverly well written song.
and like
Yeah.
while I love in the '70s when they did it, when they did it with Eric Carr, I don't think they really understood the song until they had Eric and Bruce playing it live.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Well, obviously the musicality of it certainly goes somewhere else entirely. Yeah.
I just think because Eric Singer came from being a Kiss fan, he respected the original sort of patterns a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Well, I mean, that's a gigantic conversation because there's a part of me that feels like, when the makeup came off with Eric Carr, they had the ability to kind of go and to compete toe to toe with a lot of the heavy metal bands by that point. And there's an interesting conversation that I've had so many conversations with people who found Kiss post makeup, you know what I mean? And they were just another great quote unquote metal rock band, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean, certainly everybody was aware of their past as being that, but so I think a lot of the tempos come up. You get the guitar player that can stand toe to toe with all the other guitar players out there, and that's really how they were able to continue and flourish was by competing toe to toe with everybody else that was doing something similar, and basically everybody else who came up, being inspired by Kiss. Then Kiss had to kind of go, okay, well, no, this is how it's done. Okay. So, they got a singer who can hold his own in that world, and they've got a guitar player that can hold his own, and they got a drummer who took whatever Kiss was doing beyond, you know what I mean, beyond what
yeah,
they were doing. So, I mean, a lot of people go like Eric Carr played the songs too fast or Eric played the songs too busy, I 100% think that was by design. I think it'd be really foolish to think that Gene and Paul just kind of like blindly, oh, I don't know. It's like, obviously, that I think that they really said, we're going to go out there and beef up everything that we've done, whether it's Cold Gin or Detroit Rock City or any of the classics, and go out there and make those songs compete with, I don't know, take your pick of whoever was around at that time. Whitesnake or Dawkins or whatever, and we're going to be able to play songs that were written 10, 15 years before what's going on right now and make them compete with what's happening. I think that's, because I was one of those guys that we watched Animalize live uncensored, as a daily intake, it was just what we did, and I was like, to me, that their performance and their ability stands toe to toe with anybody else at that time.
Yeah, they modernized the songs a lot for the right reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they kind of had to. It'd be like, it's the times had changed. Now we all like to as grown-ups now, we all kind of go, oh, I'd love to hear the sort of more original version of this song, or like a more faithful rendition of this song. But at the time, Eric Carr was the guy who was making it way bigger and way heavier and faster and more energetic. And I 100% believe that was by design. I've never really had a conversation about it, but I think that had to be like on purpose. The addition of Eric Singer obviously is a whole other thing, because he's a different kind of drummer again, different than Peter, different than Eric Carr, and almost like they sort of like, because of that Hot in the Shade thing where they really kind of embraced the legacy of the group, without really looking back, and they never seemed like the kind of band that spent too much time looking in the rearview mirror at what they'd done at that time. Do you know what I mean? So then I think it's, now it's all about paying tribute to what was and moving forward. How do you like that? That's me just being like the company man.
Perfect.
Sorry. But what's the next record?
Love Gun.
That's interesting. Christine 16. Like, I'm trying to think of the ones that are not hits or whatever you would call them. Although Christine 16 got a lot of love.
Got Love for Sale.
Oh man, Almost Human.
Almost Human.
What about And Then She Kissed Me?
That's great.
That's a whole podcast unto itself. Because as a kid, I remember being like, obviously, I don't know that I had sat down and embraced or sought out the original version of that song, but it certainly was one of those songs we were kind of like, have I already heard this song? That kind of, the fact that they kind of took on something so brazen like that was like, and made it a Kiss song. You know what I mean? Like, it really sounds like a Kiss song. Paul sings the shit out of that song. You got to give him credit for having the balls to do something like that. That's an Eddie Kramer too, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so there's some things about those like Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun that is sort of a throwback in its own way to being just a rock and roll band, but they still kind of push the envelope with stuff like that. And Almost Human and Love for Sale have almost this sort of like, I wouldn't call it disco, but there are elements about those songs to me that start to kind of, I see those things kind of, those bass lines are really moving around a lot, very these kind of octavey kind of disco things going on that he would implement a lot more.
Well, it's 77, so disco's starting to come in.
Yeah, I definitely think that I can hear that in some of the songs where there's a little bit of this and that kind of going on in there. But those songs that we just mentioned alone are like all great,
Plaster Caster.
Yeah, Plastic Caster. Yeah, jeez, I forgot about that. Yeah, see, those are like songs that you kind of you can't help. Oh, well, then of course you get like, obviously, when you think of the ones that are hits, key songs like Love Gun, Shock Me is a massive thing because that's Ace's first vocal. What else? What's the other stand-up? Stole Your Love, yeah. Then they opened that next tour with I Stole Your Love, right?
Yeah.
Yes. There we go. But I'm gonna say Almost Human. That's as a kid I remember being obsessed with that song because it had an Alice Cooper-y kind of Sabbathy quality to it too, as well as slightly kind of down, that kind of like slightly some kind of funky shit going on there. I don't know.
It doesn't belong on the album, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a different chapter when you consider like that's a Gene song, but so is Christine 16, which sounds like it might have been a Little Richard cover or something. Like it has this kind of like throwback, almost kind of like doo-wop 50s kind of vibe to it. The Paul songs on that are, he's just on fire by that point. Like, Love Gun and I Stole Your Love. And, well, I mean, he just really knows what his strengths are and really nails that, all those classic Paul Stanley isms. He's got all that totally down by that point, and he's singing his ass off. That very first down 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 down. All right, when he does that, all right, you actually like can hear the microphone blowing up, like you can see all the things going, all the meters going to the red, like, and it's just so perfect. You're like, whoa, like the energy just explodes right from there, But again, if I had to pick the deep cut, then I would probably say Almost Human. Or I don't really think. Human. Which one?
Almost Human for sure.
Yeah, I think so.
So we're going to skip the solo albums too.
You're going to skip them? Well, it's two. They're all deep tracks. Yeah.
To me, trying to talk about. If you want to talk about them, that's a whole separate entity.
It is. Yeah.
So it's Dynasty.
Dynasty or Dynasty.
In Australia.
Dynasty. What was I going to say? Well, that album's got, because it's funny, like, a lot of people look back at that record with a great deal of disdain because of the disco-isms. But as a kid, we didn't really consider. I still think to this day, X-Ray Eyes and Sure Know Something and all those are great songs, man. Like there's some great songs. Hard Times. There's a lot of Ace Frehley on that. Save Your Love, Hard Times, 2000 Man. Like that, at that point, he went from singing like one song, like 0 songs, and then all of a sudden one song to suddenly singing like 3 songs on that record is pretty impressive. One of which is a Stones cover, as you know.
I think it's a perfect album. Just needs to be, the production needs to be a little different. There's nothing wrong with the songs.
No, I mean, and it was of the time where you kind of like, you can see them kind of starting to kind of play ball or become influenced by what was going on, and that's, we sort of forget the Stones around Some Girls and Emotional Rescue were totally like flirting with disco and. Yeah. Rod Stewart was doing Do You Think I'm Sexy and all that kind of stuff. It was like very, very much what was going on at that time. So to me, it was like I say, we were too young to really be that picky about like, oh, this is a disco record. I wouldn't even know the difference. My mom was probably in love with the Bee Gees and ABBA anyway. So we were probably like, oh, it just kind of like fits in there. But yeah, so the deep cuts on that one, I mean, there's a lot of good ones because of the Ace songs. Magic Touch. Yeah. I mean, again, this is a perfect example of the Paul Stanley, Paul Stanley being at the peak of his, of knowing his strengths when it came to songwriting. So Sure Know Something and Magic Touch, those to me have very, like you said, if they were mixed and produced slightly more like, I don't know, Love Gun era, they would be perfectly acceptable rock songs. But because there's a slightly, it's not Peter Criss on the drums, so that makes a massive difference right there. And on top of that, Dirty Living's great. Like when you talk about, it's great. It's all. As a kid, I didn't sit there going like, no, I don't like this song. It's like the whole record to me was great, and we were like at that perfect age where we were kind of like starting to get old enough to kind of to be in. invested anyway, regardless. It wasn't like I was 5 and not getting it at all. I was like, no, I was, at an age where I was starting to kind of make sense of what everybody brought to the table. That said, I would have to kind of like, Hard Times is great. Save Your Love's fantastic. One of my favorite things, Zach Throne and I always kind of talk about, save your love, save it. Save it. You can hear Paul and Gene so clearly in the backgrounds, which one of the things I love about Kiss and the Beatles in ways is you can hear like other guys' voices in another guy's song. You know what I mean? Where you can actually, whereas later on it'd be a lot of Paul singing a lot of his own harmonies and stuff like that. Where on that particular thing you hear like it sounds like a band. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he also comes back in at the end on his own at the very end of it. Of the call and response. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. But I think you're right. I think Magic Touch is going to be mine. It's going to be mine.
With Ace's band that he's got now, he should be doing Save Your Love.
Are they not doing Save Your Love?
I don't think they are. But that's the one song that band, with all of them being such good singers.
Oh, yeah. They would nail that. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm going to put that out there to those guys. I'd be like, how are you not doing Save Your Love? Although I'm sure those guys are, 100% on board to do it.
Yeah, they probably already know it.
Of course they do. Yeah, those guys know everything.
Yeah, so next is Unmasked.
Well, there's a lot of deep cuts on that. Torpedo Girl immediately comes to mind. Yeah, that's another record with a ton of Ace Frehley on it. Talk to Me. Torpedo Girl. What's the other one? There's another one on there that's Ace Frehley. I can't remember.
Two Sides.
Right. What about? Well, there's a lot of interesting stuff on that record. There's no Peter Criss songs, obviously, because he's not really involved.
So I want to say Naked City.
That's a great song.
It's a great song. It's the one thing that I think Gene, when he did his 2004 solo album, should have redone.
Yeah. That's actually
probably one of my favorite songs of his.
It is. It's a great vocal. Gene sings the shit out of that song. I don't even know if you would consider Is That You like I'm trying to think. What were they considering? If Shandy was a single, She's So European.
Yeah, down here it was Shandy, Talk to Me, Is That You?
Oh, Is That You is fantastic. It's like I know that they didn't write that song, but there's something about that performance that Paul just kills that song.
It was like it was written for him.
Honestly, it's one of those examples of an artist just making a song his own. I have no idea what was intended to sound like, but whatever it was, it sounds. And that's one of those, another exception where you think like Dynasty or Unmasked as sort of more slick disco sounding albums. Is That You sounds like a Kiss song. It sounds like if they had done the production of the older records, it would have been like seamlessly would have worked on any record. Where things like no, I haven't. Or maybe I probably have. I must have heard that on something. Is it on like a box set or something?
No, it's on YouTube, like the original guy doing the demo.
Oh, interesting. Who is that guy again?
Jared McMahon.
Oh, okay, interesting. Well, I'd like to check that out.
I'll link it.
So the deep cuts for that, I would probably say, I don't know, Torpedo Girl. It seems fine. I love that song. It's like it was kind of like at that time when Ace Frehley could do no wrong. We just thought he was he was always the standout kind of like he was always the guy in the background. They always thought who's that guy? What's he got going on? So when he suddenly started stepping up front, we were like, whoa, what's going on? But yeah, I what's that?
Two sides of the coin for me.
Oh, okay. Well, of course, yeah, that's obviously a no-brainer too. Yeah, I'm just
there's a great extreme metal version of it out there.
Oh, really? Wow, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, it's funny.
What about? Is there any Paul Stanley ones that are kind of deep cut at that point on that record, or not really?
Tomorrow.
Oh, that's a great song.
Yeah.
We're gonna fall in love tomorrow. I mean, it's another classic example of how good of a pop songwriter Paul could be if he wanted to be. That one could have been on like another artist. He could have easily had somebody else do that song. It would have been a big hit for them. Yeah, that's good.
Now we move to the album that everyone hates, but I still love, The Elder.
I still love this record too. There's a lot of weird stuff on that record. Escape from the Island alone is the first thing that comes to mind. An instrumental of, such a monumental. I mean, it's like Mr. Blackwell is fantastic. Dark Light is fantastic. I start to lose track of like some of the actual songs because they get so out there, as far as Under the Rose. Under the Rose is fucking awesome, actually.
That's vicious, that song.
It's another one of those records where, like, if it had slightly been, maybe if it hadn't been so self-important, I suppose, and maybe it had been, like, some of the production was a little over the top on purpose because it was meant to be so, important, I guess. It sort of creates this vibe of, like it's a little over the top in some ways. But I mean, I'll tell you, as a kid, again, I was young enough that it was just a new Kiss record was out, and that's the law. So stuff like The Oath was like, what? You just was. Yeah. It sounded super heavy, and they were back. I'm gonna go with Under the Rose though, as far as the deep cuts go. I'm gonna, as soon as we're done with this, I'm gonna go listen to that record.
Yeah, Mr. Blackwell for me.
That is a great one.
Like I always thought.
It's a weird song too. Like it's almost like there's almost some new wave-isms about it or something. I can't quite place it, but
I guess for me as a kid, I thought that'll be like. Of course, they never toured, but I thought that'd be the one that he'd spit blood to.
Right. Yeah. Probably.
Bass intro.
Totally. Yeah, that's a really cool one. You know what? You've actually kind of made me go. I'm gonna go listen to that record. It's been a minute, so I'm gonna go try and check it out.
Yeah, I think my wife hasn't heard it, so that'd be really fun for her.
Yeah, that's what wives like, is the super deep cuts from super albums. Yeah. What is this? Well, yeah.
Look for my Spotify playlist by Quarantine.
Yeah, exactly. Quarantunes.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Creatures.
Oh, wow. See, Creatures is another really important record for me. I remember being like that guy who bought that record, and I go, "Have you heard the new Kiss record?" And people going, "Like Kiss? Are they still around?" And I'm like, "Dude, it's awesome. Like it's like they got something to prove, Let me just think of the track listing really quickly. I wish I had these records in front of me. It'd be a lot easier to make sense of this. But
I'm going to nerd out now. Creatures, Satan Sinner, Danger, Keep Me Coming.
Wow.
I Love It Loud.
Well, when you get into things like On the Eighth Day and Rock and Roll Hell, what's that?
Eighth Day is Lick It Up.
Get it up. You're right. I was thinking of Rock and Roll Hell. Rock and Roll Hell, Saint and Sinner, Rock and Roll Hell, Keep Me Coming, which is kind of deep cutty a little bit. You know what I mean? What else is on that?
I Still Love You, War Machine.
Yeah, those are all pretty major songs because that album was so. When they toured after that, they played a lot of those songs. Creatures, I Still Love You, War Machine. What else did they play off that record?
Hell.
They play Rock and Roll Hell live?
The first two shows.
Really?
Keep Me Coming, they played a couple of times too.
What's the one? Is it Rock and Roll Hell that BTO did a version of as well?
It is.
Yeah.
And then Ace redid it.
Is that right? Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, on that last cover album he did, he redid Rock and Roll Hell.
Right. That's right, he did, yeah. Interesting, wow.
And then, have you seen like the original track list for that album before they cut it all down?
No.
So there was like another 4 songs.
Oh, is that right? Wow. Did he record those? Didn't include them? Or what did you?
No, it's My Life. Back on the Streets.
Really?
A song called Betrayed, and there was another one.
Is it
I think they were going
Betrayed?
to, Partners in Crime, they were going to put on it.
Oh, is that the Betrayed from Hot in the Shade Betrayed?
No.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow,
there's a mock-up cover that it was all done.
wow, interesting.
And It's My Life would have saved that album.
Yeah, certainly, yeah. But as far as deep cuts on that album, I mean, because it was so, obviously I Love It Loud was so I Love It Loud, Creatures of the Night, War Machine, I Still Love You. Those are the 4 songs that probably got played live for years after.
Yeah.
They still play War Machine sometimes, don't they?
And I Love It Loud.
And I Love It Loud, yeah. So, Saint and Sinner's great. Rock and Roll Hell, I'm gonna say Rock and Roll Hell only because, I haven't heard that one in a long time and I used to love that song.
Yeah, for me, Saint and Sinner, that riff when it first comes in is so good.
Yeah, it's great. That is a great song. That's another record I'm gonna go back and listen to. It's been a minute. Keep Me Coming is, even though I think Keep Me Coming is such a standout track, it really is it was kind of like another one where Paul Stanley was really starting to kind of flex his muscles. It's kind of a crossover moment between the 70s Paul Stanley into the 80s Paul Stanley, you know what I mean?
It was like a cross between Led Zeppelin and Animalize.
It really is. That's actually the best analogy. It's kind of like where they were going.
Yeah. So Lick It Up is next.
Well, that one's got a lot of, On the Eighth Day. Oh, what's the standout one on that? We all know is Not for the Innocent.
Yeah.
I mean, that song huge.
If they'd only done the original version with the trade-off vocals.
That's so cool, right? I've heard that. That's like so cool. But Gene sings the shit out of that. That's actually an interesting era too, where Gene starts to kind of really push himself too. Zach and I talk about that a lot because Zach does the Gene Simmons songs, and he'll be, damn dude, Gene's killing it on the whatever he brings up, but Not for the Innocent is one of those for sure. Same with Young and Wasted and Fits Like a Glove, like all those kind of Gene Simmons songs. He's like going for it. You know what I mean?
When you chance, go back and listen to that demo. I actually think that was from Creatures, that demo, and they left it off and kept it for Lick It Up.
Well, it was Michael James Jackson, so it would have been very easily just to kind of go, what about this? Another great one is A Million to One. A Million to One is a great Paul Stanley song.
Yeah. The standout.
When he did that on the solo tour later on, it was like, that and like I remember him doing like Sure Know Something. And did he do Magic Touch on the solo tour?
Magic Touch.
Yeah, that was. And A Million to One, like A Million to One, those are standout tracks that never got the love they should have got. So when he did them, it was like, of course, I'd love to see Paul. I still have a T-shirt from that tour, and I was like knocked out by how deep he was getting. Not to mention the solo album stuff, Tonight You Belong to Me, and all that kind of stuff. It was like to be able to hear that stuff live was nuts. What's that?
He had a great band.
He had a really great band. As far as that goes, I would say probably I'm gonna go. Well, it's tough. A Million to One and Not for the Innocent. Those are my two standout deep cuts. Not single track. What were the singles? Lick It Up.
All Hell's Breaking Loose.
I guess that's kind of it, really, for what they kind of put out as singles. Those are great. Those are great songs.
And then we go to the album that first has the appearance of your bandmate.
That's right. Dr. Kulik.
Uncredited.
He's on the outro solo for Lonely is the Hunter.
And there's one other that he punched in.
Yeah, I think there's one more, That's kind of why we kind of focused on the ones we did the last. We did a lot of Animalize on the last because it was the 25th or 35th anniversary. I don't even know what the hell it was. A long time ago, anniversary of Animalize. And so Bruce kind of plays on 2 songs on that record. Oh, Murder in High Heels, I think is the other one.
Yep.
Which actually, Burn Bitch Burn and Murder in High Heels were 2 of my favorite songs on that album. And they're both Gene quote unquote throwaways by almost everybody. They always say, oh, and I was like, yeah, but Gene Simmons throwaway is sometimes better than a lot of people's best songs. So I was kind of, so I really dig Murder in High Heels, that sort of, she's da 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 da. There's this kind of like half bars going on, a very Aerosmith kind of thing happening in there. And but there's a lot of good stuff on that record. And as far as deep cuts go, I don't know what you want to call deep cuts on Animalize, because they were around that time they were playing so much of that album live. Under the Gun, obviously Heaven's on Fire. And they didn't play Thrills in the Night very often, though, did they? They kind of don't at one point. Kind of a tough one to pull off, I guess.
In England, they were doing like Get All You Can Take, Burn Bitch Burn, I've Had Enough.
They didn't do it for very long. I think they did it like...
No, they opened with I've Had Enough.
Yeah, that's right. And then they kind of... Oh, yeah, I've Had Enough. Yeah, I've Had Enough's fantastic, too. I've Had Enough... It's funny, because I always consider, in the same that I consider like the first 3 Kiss albums, then like from Destroyer to Love Gun, those 3 albums, and then I consider, in a funny way, Lick It Up and Creatures. I know we kind of consider sister albums, and then we consider Animalize and Asylum sister albums, because there's so many they kind of find their way. Where like I kind of think of I've Had Enough and King of the Mountain kind of opening the albums. They're not really the same song in any way, but they had a sort of familiar, or like Paul Stanley was like, we're going to come out swinging. Boom, here we go. Okay.
I end up putting Animalize in with, like, I go Creatures, Lick It Up, Animalize, and I think it was because Michael James Jackson did Animalize too for a lot.
I could see that, yeah. I would agree with that. But I think, but there's so much good stuff on Animalize. I don't know what you would consider. I don't know. Well, what's your deep cut?
Lonely as a Hunter.
That is a great song. It's a really hard song. We had to learn it because there's a couple of like weird turnarounds that happen in there. Because that riff down 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 down. It's kind of like and trying to sing over that stuff.
Yeah.
I remember Zach saying something like, "What is this, like a King Crimson song?" Like trying to sing while you're doing these changes is very interesting. But yeah, that's a great song.
Asylum.
I'll allow you that. Asylum. Well, Asylum's a great album too, isn't it?
It's when they really went MTV like that. I think that's far more thought out than what a lot of people think.
I could see that. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of very strong. So the singles are "Tears Are Not Enough." I mean, Tears Are Falling. Sorry, "Tears Are Not Enough" is a separate podcast for my Canadian friends. "Tears Are Falling," "Who Wants to Be Lonely," and "All Night." Those are the 3 singles of that, right? All Paul Stanley songs. Okay, so King of the Mountain right away wins a lot of things because it's just on fire. The fact that it starts with Eric Carr, like essentially, I always wondered, like, is that the intro to the song, or is he just testing his drums? You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden it's just and we're into the song, and you're like, this is the new Kiss record? Whoa, okay, I'm in, perfect. But trying to think what else is on that record as far as deep cuts. Obviously, all the Gene Simmons songs are considered deep cuts.
Love's a Deadly Weapon.
Oh yeah. What else?
Trial by Fire, Secretly Cruel.
Oh yeah, Trial by Fire. That's on that record. Yeah.
I think the deep cuts. Radar for Love.
Radar for Love is fantastic. Brent Fitz is always waving the Radar for Love flag. When are we gonna do Radar for Love? And I was going, that's a good one. Radar for Love.
Great song.
Right.
And it would translate really well for you guys doing it.
I think so. I think we're kind of like, well, you know how adventurous we are as far as like the set list goes. So it's only a matter of time before something like that becomes the one to do.
Secretly Cruel.
Yeah, that's classic.
Yeah. For me, it's hard to go past Radar for Love.
I think Radar for Love wins. Yeah, I think you're right.
And then Crazy Nights.
There's a lot of good stuff on Crazy Nights. That's another one of those albums that sort of like the production sometimes, like you hear the record and you go, wonder what this would sound like if it wasn't quite so slick, and maybe some of the keyboards were either taken out or tapered back. Because as we mentioned before, like my favorite thing about Kiss was just when it was just like four guys playing rock and roll songs.
Yeah.
But like My Way, that's one of Paul Stanley's best vocals ever. Man, he's just like,
Yeah.
Trust me, I had to try and sing it. It was a bitch.
In the Night.
Fight Hell and Hold You.
Yeah.
Death of the Night. No, no, no. Which I guess they played live. I'm trying to think, what were the singles of that? Crazy Nights.
Reason to Live, Turn on the Night.
Right. All Paul Stanley songs again. This is the height of Paul Stanley's power at this point as a writer and as a frontman and a singer. What are the Gene songs on that record? No, no, no. Secret.
No, Hell or High Water.
Oh, Hell or High Water. That's a good one. We played that.
Thief in the Night. Good Girl Gone Bad.
Oh yeah. Wow. That's tough. I'm trying to think. What closes that album? What's the last song? Is it My Way?
Thief in the Night.
Oh, is that the last song on the album?
Yeah, My Way Side 1.
You're right. We're talking sides now. Love it. That's why I thought it was old school. I don't know. What's your choice on the deep cut?
Thief in the Night.
Yeah, might have to go with that too. That's another one that was on the docket as far as like, should we play that? Like, yeah, of course you have to play it at some, but there's such a volume of music to play that you're like, we can't play all of this, so we'll deal with Thief in the Night and Radar later.
I think you guys are really lucky to have the vocal power in that band to be able to pull the 80s stuff off.
Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, it's there's a lot going on there, and Gene and Paul were both at the peak of their powers at that time. And so when there are times where you could trade off, even if it's something like God Gave Rock and Roll to You, it's nice to be able to kind of throw a ball to somebody like Zach, who's like, he's one of my favorite singers anyway, and one of my favorite people. But yeah, you need that, and that's that was the power of that band, was having two very strong frontmen, lead vocalists kind of thing,
Yep.
So Thief in the Night, them ones, hot in the shade. Little Caesar wins for so many reasons, in a lot of ways for me, because it's the only Eric Carr lead vocal, and it's a fucking great song. I think you should see the response we get when we play it live.
I bet.
I mean, it just and the love to, I mean, Eric had sung Young and Wasted live. Black Diamond, he would sing live. He sang a version of Beth, but, I think finally having him sing an original song that was an Eric Carr song was perfect. It was the perfect song to do. And I thought that I have to kind of give it to that, because it's like, there's a lot of other songs on there that really work. I'm trying to think, what's the Cadillac one? Cadillac Dreams? That's
for me, and I'll keep championing it until you play it, King of Hearts.
That is a great song. Yeah. I would definitely putting that on your list, because there's a lot of things that just, get all over that record. But what are the singles on that record? Rise to It, Hide Your Heart, Forever.
Yep.
All Paul Stanley songs.
Betrayed is a great song.
We did Betrayed last time, and it was great.
Yeah.
We did something else. What was the other Gene Simmons song on that record that we did? Betrayed. There's another Gene Simmons song I think we did off that record, but I can't remember.
There's Prisoner of Love.
Yeah.
Cadillac Dreams.
Wasn't that?
Somewhere Between Heaven and Hell,
Yeah. No, I guess I'm
and,
wrong.
and Boomerang.
Oh yeah, Boomerang. Yeah, forgot about that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like if that was the only time I really questioned if Gene did drugs.
Which he didn't. So I say Little
That's like,
Caesar, you say King of Hearts.
yeah, or Love Me to Hate You.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
That
That is.
that they're the two I've been pushing for you guys to do every cruise.
Yeah, I know. I know. That name, that title comes up almost every time we ask what we should play.
Yeah. And now Revenge.
Oh. Well, you know what's funny is we've done so many songs off Revenge that would be considered deep cuts, like oh, Heart of
Thou Shalt Not.
Chrome. Which one? Thou Shalt Not. Yeah, that's great.
That's
Actually, that song is really, really cool and really involved. Any Bob Ezrin arrangements are always like, oh yeah, this one's half as long. Oh wait, there's that stop there. Oh, hang on, there's a break. You know, they're always challenging. And then the Heart of Chrome, and then what's the other one?
Tough Love.
Tough Love. Yeah, we've done that.
Paralyzed.
Yeah, we did that last time too. I forgot about that. Yeah. Dun,
You
dun,
probably
dun, dun.
you probably played that entire album.
Almost, because we did Car Jam. You know, I mean, we've obviously done Unholy. We've done I Just Wanna, Domino, God Gave Rock and Roll to You, and then that's pretty much. I think we probably listed almost everything on the album. Someone somewhere is going to be like, oh, what about which one? The
ballad. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that would really kill the vibe.
I always threaten to kind of do like I told Bruce once, I said it'd be really cool to do like Kiss Alive 3 in its entirety, you know, kind of like do the entire thing as Bruce's era. Would also be really cool to do Unplugged in its era or in its entirety, but like do it as a rock band. So you're playing Coming Home and all those Plaster Caster, all those cool songs, but as an entire, but as a rock band.
That would work because you guys do 2 shows, don't you?
Yeah. We generally don't do that because on the cruise, Kiss is playing a lot of those songs too. So we try to stay away from what Kiss is doing and do something totally. So when you come and see us, it's something completely different. So, but I think if we did something that was not cruise related, like not on the boat, it would be fun to do like Kiss Alive 3 in its entirety, you know. So you open with Unholy, I guess, and you close with God Gave Rock and Roll to You, you know.
Cool. Yeah.
Something like that. But yeah, so I don't know. What's your deep cut on Thou Shalt Not? Probably wins.
Thou Shalt Not.
Yeah. Neat. Yeah. Now that I think about it, yeah.
And the final album we're going to discuss, Carnival.
Oh right. The whole thing's deep cuts, isn't it? Really.
My favorite non-Kiss album, like non-makeup Kiss album.
A lot of people feel that way. You know, it's like there's so much great stuff on that record that just sort of underappreciated. It's an entire record of underappreciated music. You know, because it's, you know, we've played a bunch of it, as you know. We played Rain, Master and Slave, Hate, I
Walk Alone.
I Walk Alone, of course. Yeah, so, you know, we played a whole chunk of the record as far as, you know, because it's an underappreciated record, and the hardcore Kiss fans love that record in the same way that it is underappreciated, like The Elder is underappreciated, and a lot of the hardcore fans love those records. I mean, they love hearing the stuff that just doesn't get touched upon. But as far as like deep cuts, it's a hard one. That's a difficult one to discuss. Like, what do you consider? Maybe what you consider your favorite track.
I Walk Alone.
I would certainly you have to give it to Bruce, because that again, at the time, I remember thinking like, oh, finally Bruce gets to sing a song. Oh, it's over. You know, it's like it was, you know, because you had Eric Carr sing a song before, and then you had Bruce sing a song on Carnival.
kind of bizarre. Their first proper lead vocals were both on their final albums.
That is weird. That's very interesting that you say that. Yeah.
And like literally, you think about the fact, Caesar, as in the Emperor. What happened to him? Eric Carr. I Walk Alone. Bruce is gone.
I know. That was a very telling title, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh, it's the most epic song Kiss have ever recorded.
It is. It is. Yeah. Totally. No, it's a very epic song. When Union would play it, it was really cool that they were actually doing it.
Yeah, and the fact that a lot of Union songs I've now learned off that first album were born out of old Carnival riffs.
Right. Totally. Did Union play? Did Union play like Motley songs?
Yeah, Power to the Music.
Right. Right.
Another underrated band and another subject.
Another underrated record, certainly. Yeah.
So what's your deep cut? Walk Alone?
Yeah, I think you have to give it to Bruce. After what you consider, I've watched a lot of that behind the scenes footage, that they put out, and considering what was going on at that time, I don't know what the actual timeline is. If it was like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if it was. They must have been in talks with the original lineup by then, weren't they? I don't know how that works.
So they were mixing Carnival when they got told.
Ugh. That sucks. Well, it would have been very interesting to see how what that record would have done if the reunion hadn't happened, which is a very another universe timeline to talk about. It's sort of purposeless at this point. But it's
Master and Slave out as the single in '97.
Mm-hmm.
And it went to like number one on active rock radio straight away.
Interesting. Wow.
It makes me wonder how many people discovered Master and Slave and then went, I'm going to go see Kiss, and expected them to sound like Carnival of Souls on the reunion tour.
Yeah. It's a totally different thing, isn't it? Entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the fascinating thing about being a Kiss fan, is that there's so many different chapters and versions and a band to have managed to span that giant chunk of time. We're talking basically classic rock into disco, into 80s hair metal, into post grunge, and then beyond. You know what I mean? So it's like you're talking about a band that has sort of bridged all of it. You know what I mean? All of that in their own way. They've done their own version of all of that kind of stuff. In the same way that bands like the Stones, you can look back on the Stones and find like elements of new wave in certain parts of the Stones and disco elements and things like that. And any band that's been around that long is going to have like slight changes based on what's going on at that moment. And I think a band like Kiss with that much history, that's bound to happen too.
Hope you enjoyed that chat with Todd. He is one of my favourite people and a constant source of inspiration, both personally and professionally. Make sure you follow Todd on his socials, and that'll keep you up to date with his many projects. The newest is Minefield. That features Jeremy and Matt from Ace Frehley Band, along with Brandon Fields. They have 2 great tracks out at the moment you should check out, and I know they're in the process of recording more. Thanks again for tuning in.